Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Hospitality Talks. And I am joined today by James Brown, who is co-founder of TipJar, amongst other things within his portfolio of working life. James, thank you so much for joining me. TipJar is a relatively new business. So just if there's anybody out there who doesn't know who you are, who TipJar are, what you're trying to get out there and achieve, please could you just do a brief introduction?
Hey, well, thanks for having me. I'm slightly jet lagged, so hopefully I can answer the questions properly today. But TipJar is effectively a business which helps bring transparency and staff control to tipping. We collect tips, we help businesses collect more tips, effectively with a kind of rails for tipping and the infrastructure for tipping in businesses. And what we give to staff is a Monzo type fintech experience where they can see transaction level detail, control their money, withdraw the money on the same day of their shift, no longer waiting for 2, 3, 4 weeks to get their tips. And we effectively, by doing that, we link employee performance to employee reward, and we hope to drive those incredible hospitality behaviors that every business is requiring to keep their customers in the modern world to be more prevalent.
Yeah, and I know that we're going to get on a little bit later to some research that you've conducted that's looking into both consumer and staff sort of point of view on tipping. Do we have a problem? Do we have a problem in the industry with tipping? Why is it not working? Why did nobody creates a product unless it's going to solve a problem? So what's the problem?
Yeah, I think that we certainly do have a problem, and I think that and the problem for me is around transparency. There's a lot of kind of media noise around bad restaurateur takes tips. I don't necessarily prescribe to that as a problem of today. I think a lot of businesses who had bad practices in the past have cleaned those up. There are still some lingering behaviors in that world, which I think we need to address, and it's come out in the research, and we talk about it later on around deductions or transparency. I think that what's happening is that society, both consumer society and modern staff, is moving towards a world where they no longer accept, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine, we calculated your income for you or your tips. The modern employee wants transparency and fairness and really cares about those things and can be vocal and is not scared to put their hand up and say, hang on a minute, how does this work? I'm not quite comfortable with this happening, and are willing to kind of talk about it publicly. And I suppose when I was a bartender 50 years ago, if I was unhappy about something, I would probably tell 15 of my friends and family, and it might impact whether my parents go into that bar in 4 weeks' time, 4 years' time. Nowadays, with staff members quite open to building online presences, both even bartenders, I see many of my staff on LinkedIn building their career from an early age, and we advise that because people want to build their own personal brand and their own personal story and have that digitized, whether that be via TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram. They're willing to be vocal about issues that matter to them, that they care about, and that impact them. So I think that without sounding like brutally old, what a modern employee and bartender and server and host and kitchen porter and chef is willing to accept today versus what they accepted 10 years ago. So it's for me night and day. And as an industry, hospitality attracts young people in their first job, potentially not being ground down by the reality of life. They're optimistic, they're excited, they expect more from life, and maybe that's makes it sound a bit, but in a good way, and that's what makes hospitality great. You get energy when you come into a hospitality venue, and you get excitement from the team. And if any of that kind of experience there doesn't quite match up with their kind of worldview or on fairness or how the world works, they're going to call you out on it. And I think that's a good thing for the industry. And I think that the best operators out there are kind of bringing that transparency, access, financial emancipation to their team members. And I suppose kind of last thing for me is that the reason probably I really started it was that I found myself in a situation where I really benefited as a hospitality employee. And the reason I kind of fell into this career, and I meet hospitality professionals all the time that say, oh, I was never meant to be in the industry, but I ended up running Green King or whatever they're using. The stories kind of similar. but probably the reasons why we all kind of fell into it is probably that the hourly rate was similar to a shop, but you kind of sacrificed your social life for tips, right? And those cash tips and that instant liquidity. Ben, my co-founder, had found himself with a young family in London. He was 19 years old. He was working in a cocktail bar, and he used to actively ask for 50p's and 20p's to put in his everyone else was asking for cash notes out the tips in that he was putting it in the electricity meter to keep his family warm. And like, I was using the money to go out and drink and have fun when I was a bartender. Slightly different cause, but for everyone, it's like that money, that instant liquidity matters, and that was disappearing. Right, getting a lump sum of cash. Yeah, 2 weeks after was tough.
And of course, we find ourselves now in the new buzzword phrase of a cost of living crisis, which makes me think that tips must just, as we said earlier, as things get squeezed, tips become even more and more important. And I've seen from some of the research that I think it was 88% of staff that you spoke to said that the tip process influences where they work and how long they stay. So staff are telling us that it's absolutely imperative. 88% is pretty definite, isn't it?
Well, listen, all of us are doing this, no matter where you are in society. You're looking at your electricity bill and how much you spend on delivery and how much you do this, how many times you go out. It's prevalent to everyone. Yeah. I think that at the same time, people are looking at where their income comes from, and staff are openly saying to us in this research, not only would they choose a place based on transparency and fairness where to work, but 84% of people saying they're worried they don't get a fair share, or they don't understand how their tips are shared, and they don't get visibility of how those tips are shared, and that they're worried about it. And I think a further get the stat exactly, but a further 67% said that they've questioned their tips and not been able to get a definitive answer, or an answer that kind of understood it. And I think that I don't blame businesses for that, because it is actually really difficult. It's a manual process a lot of the time, or it's someone in finance or payroll who is kind of rushing to meet deadlines, and the ability to get back to vast amounts of staff to look up a spreadsheet and send them an email and make that clear is difficult. And that's why we built TipJar, to give that transaction level detail, to not have to ask those questions. You just see what you get in tips and you understand it. Yeah. And if there's an error, it's glaringly obvious. So you should be able to pick that up with your employer.
And of course, from a business point of view, that is also essential, isn't it? Is that you're not adding more red tape to what is already an industry that is pretty hamstrung sometimes as to what you can't do and how you can do it. I'm curious. Sorry, go on.
I just think that like every operator out there wants their managers and their people working on customer time. Anything you do to improve. If I can get a manager out of an office in the world of Brewdog and for an hour, if I can cut a spreadsheet out, if I can, we're gone cashless. The ability to not have to count a safe 3 times a day of coins that never move is like such a benefit to me, because that time is invested in staff, in customer and product. So yeah, anything you can do to cut that, the business is better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And of course, as I always say, technology for technology's sake is not what we want in this industry. What we want is technology that improves the customer experience. Now, whether that's because it improves the employee experience, then that's the knock-on effect, or whether it's direct to the customer. But tell me what customers think about tipping. I mean, I personally know that I would be pretty annoyed if I knew I'd given 10 quid tip to somebody that served me in my local pub and it was going, half to the employer. So what do customers tell us about it from the research?
Well, I think that there's a lot of confusion out there around tipping. I think that recent media reports and legislation conversations have kind of confused people a bit. And I think that there's a business and restaurateurs aren't transparent enough to their customers about how money's used and then how money's split and it's organized. And because of the lack of clarity from staff, if there's any other questions between an employee and staff, like I used to go to my grand and my parents, this is an issue that I've lived with for 15 years. They always say, do you get this money? And the staff is kind of, depending on the staff member's belief, or if they want the cash and the instant liquidity, they'll say, oh, I kind of do, but I'd much prefer cash. Those kind of conversations have eroded trust and consumer understanding of tips. So the data says that 2 in 3 customers don't understand where non-cash tips go. Right. I think that that's kind of that's not a good place to be as businesses and brands who are kind of trying to build long-term connections and repeat visits and quality experiences with our customers. As an industry, I think that's a kind of a thing we need to fix, and 2 in 3 consumers not understanding that as a problem for me. And I think that in relation to kind of some of the data, like I think it was 1 in 2 customers would say that they have said that they would more likely visit a venue where they understood that process and they had confidence that staff were getting that money in a way that staff were happy with. I think that the other one is that kind of 57% of customers would more and a larger amount of money if they knew it was shared fairly. So the ability, and we've seen it with customers where we've added TipJar into the business and they've actually increased their staff earnings versus their current process, because customers are just happier to leave the right amount of money because they've not got this kind of like nagging doubt or kind of seed of doubt in their head that says, shall I leave a tenner? Or, well, some of it might go to business, so I'll just leave a £5. And I think that those kind of micro decisions and kind of like quick decisions consumers' head really do happen. And actually it's holding us back as an industry to retain talent, because we can't pay our team enough money as a collective as their take home on a daily or weekly basis, because we're almost limiting that by not giving that consumer transparency or trust. I think the key thing is around trust.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that, going back to where we started a little bit really, which is the modern employee wants more. They can see what's going on around them. They want that transparency. They want that clarity. The customers want to see it, and especially since the pandemic, we've seen from other research that we've done that actually that sort of honesty of brands has become even more important. So it's important to the employee, it's important to the employer, and it's important to the consumer. So to me, it sounds like it's a bit of a win-win. So I am going to leave you to go and hopefully put it all on black, because I can see that you're in Vegas.
I'm not much of a gambler, but yeah, I tried.
That's probably
I feel like they need a bit of transparency around how to do it as well, because I'm not an expert, so I feel like I need to jump in. I might jump in tonight and see if I could put someone on black.
Yeah, definitely get someone to help you with that. But just before I leave, then, so what's next for TipJar? Is it more of the same? Is it bringing on new clients? Is there anything else new and exciting going on?
Yeah, everything. We've just signed a marquee client. I can't tell you who it is, but like a pretty big marquee client with over 1,000 locations, which we're really chuffed about. That'll take us, I think, and add in addition roughly 30,000 extra users in the UK. We've got a team in the US who are trying to build a product to fit for the US. We're trying to raise money in a very difficult market. We've got some great stats. We're excited about it. And like, for me, investors hate hearing this, but for me, this is never about making money. This is about fixing a problem and making staff lives better. And people who I had a similar journey in hospitality. I want people to have the same opportunity that I had in the industry. And if I can fix it for them, that's my goal. And if the more people we can bring this product to, and like, for me, it's about continually developing and investing in the product. So quite soon we're going to give staff debit cards so they can they can spend their money instantly at the end of the night. They have to withdraw the money. It's like literally end to end. And the more we can emancipate staff and give them that kind of financial liquidity instantly, the better for everybody, the better for the operator. Because if you do an amazing thing for a customer and they tip you more, you get that money instantly. It's going to reinforce that behavior. And that's why tipping is broken in a minute. Forget all the stuff, like all the stuff we talked about is important, but it's meant to drive excellence in your business. And if you get a lump sum in 4 weeks after you've made that behavior, it's broken, right? Yeah. So as an operator, I want to fix as well. I just want to make the world, I love hospitality and I want to make it better.
Brilliant. Well, I know you very well, James, and I know that is exactly what you're planning on doing and what I think you will achieve with TipJar. So thank you so much for giving me your time when you're obviously not exactly in the country and sat at your desk. And I look forward to seeing you when you get back.